everybody, and welcome to another episode of Reasonably Tactical. Sorry, it's been a minute. I was doing some traveling for work and had some family medical stuff taken care of, but things have settled down, so here we are back again.
Well, all coughing aside, you're certainly looking a lot better. Great to see you too, guys. Great to be back. Great to have another episode here. And, you know, it's always nice having Marty in the studio. It brightens the place up just a little bit because he's such a ray of sunshine.
Yeah,
you know?
it's my
great.
sparkling personality and smile. Yeah. We're going to talk about the art of being mediocre, you know?
I don't think anyone saw that coming.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it is a fine art that people have perfected. And, you know, we've touched on it before, and we've talked about kind of frustrations with law enforcement and people with training regimens, but, you know, we're going to dive a little more into just mediocrity today. So people who are mediocre are those that do just the minimum to get by. We have previously talked about the frustrations with law enforcement, but it's a bigger cultural issue that we see day to day. It's really in like every facet of our life. You know, you look around and just kind of watch what's going on. You see it in leadership, elected officials, school districts, sports. No matter where you turn, you see people that have perfected that art of being mediocre.
Now, I'm just going to stop you real quick. Do you think that the whole mediocrity thing comes from just people not caring, or is it that they just have this attitude of, good enough?
I think it's a little bit of both, but more so where we live, it's it's that big fish in a small pond type. Like I'm just good enough that I'm better than everybody around me. But if they were to leave the bubble, people would be like, "Who are you?" You know, like never heard of you.
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting that you say that because I think you and I have had several experiences on our personal lives where we've experienced that, not just here, but just in general with our respective political circles, business circles, things like that. Right. And we sit there and we go, okay, how did they get this friggin' job in the first place?
Right. And it's something, you know, talking to buddies, you know, on free time, and, you know, they always ask me, well, was it you're just so used to working at a certain level, or is it really that big of a deal? And honestly, I take for granted my time in the military because of the level that I worked at. I was always surrounded by people with a GT score, a general technical score of 110 or higher.
Well, you had to be. And that's the other thing, too, is that you had to be around people that were smarter than you because your lives were in their hands.
Right.
And maybe that's the problem, too, that a lot of people here especially just don't have that level of importance in the grand scheme of things.
Right. It's that big fish in a small pond where people think they're the top dog, but in the grand scheme of things, like, you could be replaced tomorrow. I mean, really, all of us could. You know, nobody is that important. Nobody's that good where if you were to get hit by a truck, guess what? Somebody else is going to pick up the flag tomorrow and keep marching forward.
Well, and that's the other side of it, too, right? Is that I think they're afraid of being replaced at the end of the day, that they got complacent. They got, nice and comfortable. I mean, what do we talk about it with the whole thing before that we were saying about Lifetime Achievement Awards?
Right, exactly. It's that same thing where they get that little piece of importance and they want to hold on to it. They don't want to push themselves to try to achieve that next level because they're fat and happy where they're at right here. You know, that's the reality. That status quo has been reached, and they don't want to push themselves further.
You know, how do you really kind of spot the mediocrity? And, like, where do you see the pattern start? And you could kind of try to hopefully intervene it for yourself or for others.
Well, it's kind of everywhere. Like we were talking about, since I've retired and moved back here to Wisconsin. And it's been super disappointing, but there's that constant answer from everybody, no matter what we're talking about, whether it's sports or politics or leadership or whatever. It's that answer of, well, this is how we do it here. Mm-hmm. We do it this way. And it's like, yeah, that works today, but you're not looking to emerging, opposition or emerging threats or, emerging competition, whatever it is. And they're content with that being that big fish in a small pond. And what they don't realize is, once again, whether you're a competitive shooter, they don't understand, like, your competition is training, learning different tactics, not just the NRA video you watched online, or the enemy, or, for law enforcement, suspects are ever evolving with criminal techniques or opponents in sports. Like, you get out of this bubble and you see a whole different level of competition where we see sports teams in the area like, sweet, we win conference every year, whether basketball, football, whatever, but as soon as they get to the playoffs and leave the area, they lose the second round.
Right. It's what my brother noticed too as a cardio conditioning coach, that traditional coaches could not understand what my brother's role in the world was. They're like, we don't need you. We have a certain way of doing things. Then all of a sudden, he took the second to last place team in women's tennis to second in the country. And they're like, well, what happened? What changed? He goes, we started training differently. And it was getting outside of that bubble, making that little change that made the world a difference. But you're right. We see it in everything we do.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up the coaching aspect, because I use the story a lot of times when talking to people. Before I retired from the Army, I finally had free time. I was working at the schoolhouse, so I got into coaching, middle school football. And the coaches I was working with was great because everyone was from Army Special Operations Command. There were 4 of us from USASOC, and there was one guy, but he was a deputy who was very well known in the county.
Your training had to be like the most intense training ever. I mean, I never thought that middle school footballers would have to learn about IEDs, but that's beside the point. And I guess that's how you get them to run faster.
Exactly, the agility course. Like our guys were agile. We'd set up minefields for them. We treat, we're dealing with 13 and 14-year-olds, so we talk to them all like men. We took a team that had never won a game before and consistently got second place. We couldn't beat the Pioneers team because they just, they had bigger pool of talent to pull from. But, and it was, we talked to them like young men, and we constantly looked at what the other teams were doing. So that way, every week, we changed our play deck. We changed what we were doing so that we could meet our opposition versus the previous coaches that managed it were, nope, these are the plays that we run. It doesn't work,
So I guess what made you guys different? I mean, I know the actual tactics that made you guys different, but the mindset. What made your mindset different than what we normally tend to see with this complacency?
Well, but it was from our backgrounds. We learned, the Army had, who knows what it's called now, the 7-8, which was like the infantryman's Bible. And that was your different battle drills you did, and you knew them by heart. You could do them with your eyes closed. But it is the war on terror happened, and we all deployed to different areas. Like, guess what? Every enemy fights differently. Even in Afghanistan, fighting the Taliban versus fighting Chechens versus fighting Uzbeks, it changed the way so you had to constantly adapt your tactics. You couldn't just go in, well, this is how we fought. That's what the conventional forces did, and that's why they got spanked, because they're, round peg, square hole. We will make it fit, instead of adapting. And it's everything in life. You have to be constantly adapting so that you overcome those, challenges you face versus, well, this is how we do it, and we're going to muscle through it.
Right.
Like that, it's not going to work out in the long run. Eventually, it'll catch up.
Makes sense. And I guess for somebody that has not had the distinct background that you had in fighting and things like that with the formal training and everything like that, how could a regular person, I guess, get better? Like, what would it take for somebody to say, okay, adopt that mindset that may not be used to it because they've grown up with big fish, small pond syndrome their whole life? How does somebody actually get out of that and improve?
Well, I mean, the first step is taking that look in the mirror and realizing you're never as good as you think you are.
We should have wore the shirts.
But that's exactly. Yeah. But that's the reality for everybody is like, there's always something to work on. There's always something you could be working on, whether it's, physically, mentally, skill-wise, for every facet of life. I'm not just talking about tactical training or athletic training, just any job. If you're in the tech world, let's talk about how fast new technology comes out. You have to keep up with it, otherwise your business is going to fail. I mean, you know that. You still got to apply the KISS concept, keep it simple, but still stay knowledgeable on the latest and greatest, even with fighting.
Yeah.
Look at when, the Gracies, how they changed martial arts with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and how they were just able to decimate everybody. But then look how that's evolved into MMA, where even the guys that were on the forefront of BJJ back in the day have had to change and modify where, that's why these camps and schools were set up where they could try different styles. They could try different techniques to constantly get better. Everybody likes to see that end product. They just don't like to do the work that gets them there.
I run into that all the time. We actually had one of our former students who graced us at the school last Saturday. I wish you could have came to they call them the Hannahs. They are just two beasts,
Oh, yeah.
and they're now instructors through Alpha now too.
Okay.
And one of them, she spent 3 months in Israel, and she said she actually got to go to Wingate, and she said she did 2 weeks at Wingate, and what they did and how they broke things down was they still applied the KISS concept in a lot of ways. She said, but what was eye-opening to her was, even though this is like the mecca for Krav Maga, so to speak, is that she said some of the techniques we're adapting here stateside were actually more advanced, meaning that we've embraced the need for understanding jujitsu. I mean, our affiliate, we take our groundwork directly from the Gracie school.
Yeah.
We have Gracie instructors working with us to understand. So whenever I hear somebody say, oh, rah, jits or Krav is BS, blah, blah, they're right if they're in the wrong school.
Right.
Because if you're pigeonholed to one way of thinking in anything, you're not going to get any better. I work on groundwork. I work on groundwork myself just so I can get better and explain stuff to people. And I'm like, I'll tell somebody, listen, if you have to fight to get out of something, good old simplistic, punch to the face, elbow, get out, cool, great. Different principle than what you're doing in the ring or MMA or something like that. I said, but as we both know, we talked about this with Thornton, he said it. You can still apply the MMA techniques and the ring techniques to the street. To say that one is exclusive is absolute bullshit.
There's definitely big overlap there. And that's where, and we've talked about before, and Thornton really talked about in the book, like your real fighters aren't going picking fights at bars.
Correct.
Like they're the ones that are trying to de-escalate stuff or just leave the scene. Nope. Not gonna waste my time on this.
And there's a personal question I'm going to ask you, just from a professional standpoint, knowing your background, knowing what you went through, knowing the hell you've seen and endured yourself. When I go out with you or hang out somewhere, I notice that you are the most pacifist person in the room, and that takes some serious restraint. So I guess, would you say that it was your experiences of knowing what real, like literally picking your battles, I guess, is what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, that's what are you trying to prove? What is this the hill you want to die on? So, like with that, there's signs to look for mediocrity. So that way you can kind of avoid it. The big one right off the bat is somebody stating, well, this is how we've always done it. Like, all right, you're already stuck in that rut of complacency and status quo. The next one is, well, we do it this way. Another big one of, all right, have you looked at outside things? Have you allowed other entities with other experiences to come in? And usually the answer is no. Which leads to the next one, is discrediting any new ideas versus hearing them out and trying them. That's huge in this area. Like, in a lot of places, people have that. If I didn't think of it, I'm going to shoot this down. And it's nonsense, because it is a detriment to any organization if you have leadership like that. Resistance to feedback. Anytime you do anything, especially in training or testing, whether you're testing a new product, a new technique, or when you're training, you should always do that after action review. Do that quick feedback, hear the good, bad, and different, and that will allow you to move forward. And then lastly, of course, is that big fish in the small pond syndrome. If you get, like you constantly use the stereotypical, I was the football quarterback, and now I work at my uncle's dealership, and man, you have
because it's true. It's always true.
It's like that guy.
That's that guy. Exactly.
And his buddy's always there to throw out, like, dude, his uncle owns a dealership. That's cool, man.
I'll tell you a whole story about that offline. That's actually really humorous. So. But no, I think to Marty's point, to wrap things up here. One of the things that I think at the end of the day that we've always stressed episode after episode after episode is don't settle. Yeah. Don't settle for being mediocre. Don't settle for not pushing yourself. Guess what? Sweat is a good thing. Somebody once said sweat is all it is just energy juice leaving the body. Yeah. It's weakness leaving the body. And I always thought that was a great way to look at it, because as you work harder, as you sweat harder, you get better. And that's all we want to do. And that's what the show is about, is getting better. And, hey, if you guys got any more advice, any more ideas, like we said, comment section below. We're always here to listen.
Well, and it's just to close it out really quick, don't be average. Don't settle for that status quo. And it's not just for you personally. If you see the organization you're with, whether it's, at work, a political group you're with, speak up if you see that plateauing or that status quo. If people have just gotten complacent and you're not moving anywhere, speak up. Otherwise, nothing's ever going to change. Strive to improve, strive to be better. There will be failures along that path, but ultimately, that's how you get better. Thanks for tuning in. Have a good one.